do you think a green economy can avoid the climate changes in order to avoid the poverty issues that are attached, I think, with the climate changes effect?
Yeah, I mean, it'll certainly affect poverty because as the climate changes, that requires changes in your production system and in rural areas. And any change in a system requires some kind of capital. And by definition, poor people are lacking certain or multiple types of capital.
Right.
And so I think it's pretty clear that climate change will inevitably have an impact on the poor. So it will exacerbate poverty. Those more rich have more capacity to change. Those more poor have less. So it could generate greater inequality, really. And that's what a lot of the results are showing of studies that kind of combine social indicators into climate change assessment. If I think that if a green economy could help to avoid that, I'm a little bit skeptical to a certain extent.
Why?
The poor have little. The poor are essentially not great consumers of goods that are contributing to emissions. They're not using high fertilizer doses, so there's not so much nitrous oxide emissions. They, by definition, don't have that much livestock, because if they had lots of livestock, they wouldn't be poor. And so emissions are quite low, and therefore a green economy is really not going to provide them necessarily with benefits. Other people stand to benefit, but not necessarily the poor, certainly not exclusively the poor.
Okay, that's very good. Andy, can I ask you if you have a camera, and you want to turn the camera, or just want the audio recorded?
I could put the camera on, yeah.
All right, no problem.
There we go. I don't know if you want to...
Just try
see
it. That's better, yeah. Cafecito, you're taking the cafecito from Cali.
Yeah.
Very
I
good.
was falling asleep. That was why I needed 3 minutes. I needed to get a coffee.
Yeah. It looks better. Actually, we're going to make some trials. I think it's going to work using Camstasia's studio for the interview. We'll see how it works, okay?
Okay.
So the second question is about the possible way to contribute to the economy in poor mountain-specific regions. But I think it was covered in the previous question as well. That's all right. The next one is about carbon bond services. How do you think those services can be promoted, taking into consideration the role of the beneficiaries and also the governance aspect of it?
I mean, it all boils down to the governance aspect, really. The World Bank, I think they just recently did a study looking at, for example, if you were to set up a carbon-based market system for soil carbon, transaction costs would be approximately 60% of the value of the market. And so with that level of transaction costs, it's just nothing is going to be cost-effective. And so the key with all of these carbon-based markets and carbon services is reducing those transaction costs and setting up governance systems which are pragmatic, effective, and cheap to maintain. So that's really the key. The potential is tremendous for farms to increase carbon storage. But at the moment, certainly there's very few examples or functioning examples where real monetary benefits or real benefits are arriving at smallholder farmers. At the moment, it's really the middlemen that are winning on this.
That's right. Yeah. Okay. Could you explain, in your opinion, what do you think about agriculture? Because we understand that according to FAO, the sector of agriculture is responsible for the most of the carbon emissions, and also the consumers of fresh water available in the world, also the chemical fertilizers, pesticides, etc. And what do you think, or you can do about it, about agriculture?
I think the agricultural sector is the message we maintain is that it's part part of the problem, but it's also a large part of the solution. And the solution in terms of reducing emissions, but also increasing carbon stocks. So there's lots of opportunities for agroforestry systems. There are opportunities for more efficient technologies in terms of fertilizer use. There are lots of options in the agricultural sector, and some of them fairly easy options to either increase carbon storage or reduce emissions themselves. So in that sense, the agricultural sector is part of the solution. But also, there's two things that everybody really needs to survive. One is energy, and the other is food. And so without really looking and investing in the agricultural sector to ensure that it adapts, the global population, everyone will suffer, be it through prices, be it through massive food insecurity locally, be it through loss of employment. So it's an absolutely key sector that really is highly exposed to climate change, and you can't possibly think about taking action on climate change without focusing in on agriculture.
What do you think about developing a green agricultural sector specifically? Could this be a solution?
What's needed, as I said when we were discussing the carbon markets, a green agricultural sector is what's needed, but you've got to figure out the way of doing that. It needs good policy, it needs good governance systems and carbon markets, and all of that needs to be done efficiently with the minimum of transaction costs.
Right.
So I think it's something that no one person or no one entity or organization can do. It needs public sector policies to be effective, it needs private sector policies to be effective, and it needs individual behavior as well to change. So it's a big challenge, but it's a worthy challenge, and one that we're certainly within the program of climate change, agriculture, food security really focusing in on.
Yeah, you think what will happen with those communities, those rural communities that fall outside the market in this case? How would they benefit with the green economy? What can we do about that?
I mean, a green economy is not necessarily for everybody. I don't think, nor necessarily should everybody have to contribute to that. It obviously needs a critical mass, and it needs enough people focusing in on it. But it doesn't necessarily have to be the entire population of a country engaged in that green economy. I think you've got to look for the opportunities for a green economy where it's cost effective, and that's not necessarily everywhere.
Okay.
So those that have the capacity to reduce their emissions or increase carbon storage on their farms, then that's where we need to find the policies and the markets that work for that to happen. For those that don't engage in that, then they just can continue as the systems as they are.
Okay. Do you know any example about some rural communities in the context of green economy which can contribute to reduce the effects of climate changes? Why is this case successful, and what can we improve?
One from the region here specifically is silvopastoral systems. So you have a project right now operating in many parts of Colombia, where they're installing silvopastoral systems, providing essentially incentives and credits and subsidies for farmers to adopt silvopastoral systems in kind of traditional pasture-based livestock systems. So that's essentially planting legumes, planting trees to provide shade, but also essentially bring in nutrients, fix nitrogen, diversifies the diet of the livestock. It allows intensification, increases carbon stocks on the farm, and so that's a classic. First of all, it's a system that's highly highly effective in terms of reducing, being a net sink for carbon dioxide or its equivalent. But also, it's a case where you have a good incentive mechanism. You have private sector policy, so the Federation of Livestock Keepers of Colombia providing a lot of funding. There's public money coming from the Global Environmental Facility. It's so there's public policy, there's private policy, and through a project essentially creating a good incentive for adoption of this. So that's a great example here in this region. In Kenya, in some of the mountain regions in Kenya, they have agroforestry systems which are being provided with some credits essentially and monetary benefits for people, farmers who adopt these agroforestry systems. So they get paid essentially per tree that they have on their farm. And so there's another example that first few months of operation seems to be giving good results.
Excellent.
So I suppose those are the successful examples.
Could you just
what can be improved and how? I think the key is replicating this and doing it with the minimal of public investment needed. And so I think that's where you need the private sector to come in. And so they're talking about this kind of carbon offsetting has also always been discussed, but a lot of companies now are thinking about carbon insetting. So essentially, agro business, food business companies who want to reduce their emissions, their carbon footprint, invest in their own supply chain. So they invest in the farmers that are providing their products to mitigate their processing, manufacturing emissions. And so that's a good example of something. And there are now a few companies that we've come across that are now trying to do that and implement that in their supply chain.
That's private partnership is very important for the future to make it sustainable. That any economy sustainable, you need strong partnerships and strong also the awareness raising of these issues at different levels. It's true. I just wanted to ask you about
the problem is that at the moment many of these schemes are highly subsidized with public money, and that's not sustainable. So that's where the partnerships are key.
Exactly. Can you tell us about the adaptation and mitigation framework for agriculture and food security that SEAT is supposed to be developing now in countries?
Well, SEAT leads the CGIR research program on climate change, agriculture, and food security, and we have a framework essentially for the 5-year program that we're using, which is looking at kind of 3 on-the-ground entry points to research for development, looking at adaptation to long-term climate change, risk management to short-term climate risk, and pro-poor mitigation. So those are our 3 on-the-ground interventions, and then that's supported by kind of a diagnostics and decision-making framework, which ensures that scientific knowledge leads to action on the ground, ensures that policy and private policy is suitable to incentivize those changes on the ground, and providing the data and the tools and information resources to support partners and stakeholders to make those changes. So that's our framework that we've got for the 5-year program that we've just started in January this year.
Excellent. I wish you very good luck with the program, and thank you very much for your contribution.